I stood in the courtroom, my fingers gripping the edge of the polished wooden table like it was the only thing holding me upright. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on every uncomfortable face in the room. The walls felt too white, the silence too sharp. Then came the voice. Her voice. She's a gold digger. She only married him for money. It wasn't whispered. It wasn't subtle. It was loud, proud, and designed to humiliate. Celeste's voice cut through the air like a blade, echoing off the courtroom walls and landing right in the pit of my stomach. I didn't flinch. I didn't let my face change. But inside I burned. The judge blinked, unamused but patient. My lawyer shifted in her seat beside me. And I stared straight ahead like I didn't just get slapped with a label meant to define me in front of everyone who mattered. The judge, the lawyers, my daughter. Celeste. She was younger, blonder, louder. Always had a flair for drama and a hunger to be center stage. Even before she became Derek's wife, she didn't like me. I never knew why, but I suspect it had something to do with the fact that I'd lived a life she couldn't pretend into. I had loved Derek before the suits and the six-figure job. I had helped build the man she married. But none of that mattered now. Celeste stood next to Derek like a trophy with a temper. She wore a fitted blazer and sky-high heels, every inch of her manicured and curated. She was playing a part and playing it well. And when she threw that accusation into the air, she didn't just mean for the judge to hear it. She wanted everyone, especially my daughter, to hear it. Behind me, I could feel Tessa's eyes burn into my back. She was 13, old enough to understand too much, too young to be in the middle of this mess. But she'd insisted on coming. Said if they were going to talk about her life, she wanted to be in the room for it. I told her it would get ugly. She said she could handle ugly. I wasn't sure I could. Derek's lawyer, Mr. Clean, a man who always looked like he'd just come from playing a round of golf with someone important, leaned forward with the practiced poise of someone who liked to win, especially at the expense of women like me. There's a clear financial motivation here, Your Honor, he said smoothly. Miss Langley benefited significantly from Mr. Langley's income during the marriage. We believe her current financial demands reflect the same pattern. Miss Langley. Like I was just another name in a file. Like I hadn't carried their client's child, stayed up through nights of teething, asthma attacks, and school projects. Like I hadn't worked nights waitressing to pay our rent while Derek figured out what kind of man he wanted to be. He said it like I was a burden, a leech, a mistake. Still I said nothing. My heart thudded against my ribs, a dull and steady ache. I breathed in slow, willing my hands to relax. If I cried, they'd see weakness. If I lashed out, they'd see bitterness. Either way, I'd become the stereotype they were painting. I turned slightly in my seat, just enough to see Tessa in my peripheral vision. She sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes locked straight ahead. She looked small in that big courtroom chair. But her gaze was fierce. And then she moved. Suddenly she stood up. Her voice was clear, steady, and loud enough to cut through every hushed whisper and shuffle of papers in that courtroom. Mom, she said. Should I tell them what we found in Dad's bank statements? Time froze. Every head turned, every single one. The court reporter stopped typing. Mr. Clean's pen hovered midair. Even the judge leaned forward slightly, his eyebrows raised. Derek turned to his daughter, face pale and eyes wide. Celeste stiffened next to him, her painted smile faltering. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat tightened with shock and something else, something deeper. Pride. Fear. Maybe both. I hadn't wanted her to speak. I told her this was for the adults to handle. But my daughter, she had different plans. She wasn't just protecting me. She was protecting the truth. In that moment I realized something. For all the times I had swallowed my pain, all the times I had held my breath and kept quiet to keep the peace, Tessa had been watching. She had seen me try to survive with grace. And now she was done watching. She was ready to speak. I could see it in her posture. She wasn't scared. She wasn't angry. She was resolved. The courtroom would never be the same. The judge looked over the rim of his glasses, his voice calm but commanding. "Miss Langley, Tessa, is it? Please sit down. This isn't your turn to speak." Tessa's hands were trembling now, but she didn't sit. "I know it's not," she said, her voice cracking only slightly. "But they're lying. And if nobody says anything, you'll believe them." She turned toward Celeste, who was now clutching her purse like it might protect her. "She's the one who told Dad to hide the money," Tessa said. "I saw the texts." Dead silence. Celeste flushed crimson, her mouth opening, then snapping shut. Derek leaned toward her, whispering something harsh enough that even the court clerk glanced up. The judge looked at Tessa again, this time not dismissively, but with the cautious interest of someone who'd seen too many lies and just maybe sensed the truth slipping through. My attorney, Miss Harris, leaned toward me. "Did you know about this?" she whispered. I shook my head slowly. "No. I told her not to bring anything up." But Tessa had always been stubborn, just like her father. The difference was, her fire came with a conscience. The judge cleared his throat. "Tessa, if you have evidence, you may submit it through your mother's legal counsel. But you may not speak out of turn again. Understood?" She nodded, then sat quiet again. I should have been angry with her for interrupting the proceedings. But all I felt was the shift in the room, the slow unraveling of the facade Derek and Celeste had so carefully crafted. Something had cracked. Ms. Harris adjusted her glasses and stood. "Your Honor," she said, her voice smooth but firm, "I'd like to request a recess. My client and I need a moment to review new potential evidence." The judge looked at the opposing counsel. "Any objection?" Mr. Clean was caught flat-footed. No, Your Honor." "Good. 15 minutes. Court will resume at 10:45. He banged the gavel. The echo still hung in the air as people began moving. But I didn't move. I turned to look at my daughter. "Tessa," I said, low and serious. "What are you talking about?" She hesitated. "I didn't go looking. I swear. But I was using Dad's laptop at his place last month. He forgot to log out of his bank app. I saw weird withdrawals, big ones, like way bigger than child support. And then I saw texts from Celeste." She opened her backpack and pulled out a manila envelope, thick and bulging. "I printed them. All of it." Ms. Harris took the envelope with wide eyes. "You printed these?" "I emailed them to myself first," Tessa said with a shrug, "in case he tried to delete everything later." Ms. Harris opened the envelope and began flipping through the papers. Bank statements, screenshots, a string of messages between Derek and Celeste. The further she flipped, the deeper her frown grew. "These are real," she muttered. "This isn't just hiding assets. This is manipulation. Fraud." She looked at me. "You didn't know about any of this?" "No," I whispered, suddenly breathless. I had no idea. You could win custody outright with this. Full custody. And alimony. If we file a motion to admit this evidence." My heart stuttered. Full custody. That hadn't even been the goal. I just wanted fairness. Stability. A life for Tessa that wasn't caught between games and lawyers and accusations. "Tessa," I said slowly, "do you want to live with me full-time?" She met my eyes. "Yes. I don't feel safe at Dad's anymore. Not with her." There it was. The thing she hadn't said until now. The fear she had hidden under all her bravery. I reached out and took her hand. "Okay," I said softly. "Okay." When we walked back into that courtroom, I felt different. Stronger. Not because I had proof or leverage, but because I had truth. And someone beside me who believed in it enough to risk everything. The judge looked up as we returned. "Miss Harris?" he asked. "Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to submit new evidence into the record," documents supporting hidden financial transactions and potential coercion by Mrs. Langley, the current spouse of Mr. Derek Langley. The judge nodded. Please approach. As she handed over the folder, I turned my head just slightly, enough to catch Celeste's face. Gone was the smug confidence. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were on the table. Derek leaned back, arms crossed, staring at nothing. I wondered for a moment if he regretted this. Not the marriage, maybe, but the games, the cruelty. When the judge finished scanning the first few pages, he let out a slow breath. This, he said, changes things. Mr. Clean stood. Your Honor, we request time to review this new material before continuing. Granted, the judge said. But understand this. If these documents are authenticated, we'll be dealing with more than just a custody case. And there it was. Celeste had tried to paint me as a gold digger. But in her greed, she had handed me the shovel, and I just uncovered the truth. The courtroom was quieter when we returned after recess, but the tension had doubled. Every glance, every shuffle of papers felt heavy with implication. The judge reviewed the documents again, his brow furrowed. Derek sat stiffly beside Celeste, jaw tight, his face pale. Celeste wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. I sat beside Miss Harris, and Tessa was behind me. I could feel her presence like a thread wrapped around my heart, pulling me forward, steadying me. Court is back in session, the judge announced. I've had preliminary time to review the financial records and messages submitted by Ms. Langley's counsel. There appears to be significant evidence of financial concealment, as well as potential witness coercion. Clean stood abruptly. Your Honor, I must object to the use of that term. This is premature. You'll have your chance to respond, Mr. Clean, the judge interrupted. But for now, I'm granting a motion to reopen discovery and suspend temporary custody arrangements pending a hearing on these new findings. Effective immediately, full custody will be granted to Ms. Langley until this court is satisfied that the child's environment with Mr. Langley is safe and lawful. I stared at the judge. Did I hear that right? Tessa's arms suddenly wrapped around me from behind. Mom, she whispered. We did it. I didn't even care about the tears. They came fast and I let them. Because for once someone believed me. The court wasn't blind anymore. Clean stammered some protest about due process, but it barely landed. Celeste finally spoke, but her voice was shaky. This is unfair. She's trying to take everything from us. The judge gave her a long look. No, Mrs. Langley. From where I sit, it appears you were trying to take everything, and just got caught. Boom. That was it. The moment everything cracked wide open. After the hearing, we stepped outside into the gray morning. It had started drizzling soft, cold rain, but it felt like fresh air after months in a cellar. Miss Harris pulled me aside. This is far from over, she said. But today was a major win. We'll file for a forensic audit next. The text your daughter found? Gold. Honestly, I've seen lawyers dream of less. I nodded, still stunned. Thank you. I don't even know how to. Don't thank me, she said, smiling for the first time all morning. Thank Tessa. That girl has more backbone than most people twice her age. When she walked away, I turned to find Tessa waiting under a courthouse awning. Arms crossed, backpack slung low. You okay? I asked. She nodded. Yeah. Just weird, you know? Seeing him like that. Dad. He didn't even look at me. I swallowed hard. That's not your fault. She kicked a pebble off the concrete. I know. Still hurts though. I pulled her into a hug. I'm proud of you. You stood up when it mattered. And you weren't alone. We drove home in silence, the kind that feels more like relief than awkwardness. Tessa stared out the window. I could see the weight slowly lifting from her shoulders. We didn't talk about court. We didn't talk about Celeste. We just drove. When we got home, the apartment felt different. Warmer. Safer. Like it was finally ours. Later that night, I tucked Tessa into bed. She hadn't asked to sleep in my room like she had so many nights before, when she didn't feel safe or wanted at her dad's. Tonight she was at peace. "I feel like I can breathe again," she said quietly as I turned off the lamp. I kissed her forehead. "You can. You're home." Down the hall, I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the envelope she had brought to court. Each printout was like a puzzle piece I hadn't known I needed, and all of them added up to something undeniable. They tried to erase me, not just from Derek's life but from Tessa's. But they underestimated one thing: my daughter's courage. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The court ordered a full investigation into Derek's finances. Subpoenas were issued. Bank accounts scrutinized. Every lie unraveled a little more. Celeste tried to save face. She even tried to paint herself as a victim, claimed Derek had manipulated her too. But it didn't land. Not with the judge. Not with the evidence. Not with anyone. Derek's lawyer backed out quietly after 2 weeks. Eventually, Derek requested a settlement meeting. I agreed. Not out of spite but because it was time to end it. To move forward. We met in a conference room, no judge this time. Just lawyers. And him. He looked older. Worn. Like the lies had started to eat him from the inside out. He didn't say much. He didn't apologize either. But he agreed to terms. Full custody to me, visitation on Tessa's terms, and a formal admission of financial misconduct. The moment the papers were signed, I felt something release in my chest. Not joy. Not even relief. Just freedom. Later that evening I sat down beside Tessa on the couch, popcorn between us. A movie we'd seen a dozen times playing in the background. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "We're gonna be okay now, huh?" I smiled. "Yeah, we are." And for the first time in a long time I believed it. 1 year later everything was different. The apartment still smelled like lavender and old books, just the way Tessa liked it. The sunlight poured through the kitchen window as she leaned over her laptop at the table, earbuds in, mouthing the words to a song I couldn't hear. It was Saturday morning, our favorite kind. She had grown taller. More confident. She joked more, smiled wider. There were still shadows, but they didn't chase her like they used to. They came and went like weather now, passing, not permanent. I sipped my coffee watching her, a quiet kind of peace filling the room. When the court granted me full legal and physical custody last fall, there was no fanfare, no tearful courtroom climax. Just a ruling, firm and final, followed by months of slow healing. Derek had stuck to the court-approved visitation terms, bare minimum. He showed up twice. The second time, Tessa told him she didn't feel safe around him and didn't want to see him again unless he took accountability. He didn't argue. Just left. He hadn't come back. Sometimes I wondered if he'd ever change. But that wasn't my battle anymore. And it wasn't Tessa's either. Instead, we focused on us. On rebuilding the home they tried to fracture. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. In the spring, Tessa joined her school's debate club. Ms. Harris called it poetic justice. She learned how to fight for herself in the hardest court there is. She said, "High school should be easy after that." The day Tessa stood in front of her class to argue for children's rights in custody cases, I sat in the back row with tears in my eyes. She wasn't just speaking. She was owning her story. Afterward, she said to me, "I didn't want to make it about me, but it kind of was. And I think that's okay." I told her it was more than okay. It was brave. In the fall, we moved to a new neighborhood. A little farther from the courthouse. A little closer to quiet. The apartment was smaller but brighter. The kind of place that let us start fresh without forgetting the past. Sometimes Celeste tried to reach out, emails, a birthday card sent from an unlisted address. Tessa read them but didn't reply. "I don't think she knows who I am," she said once. I don't think she ever did. I never pushed her. That was her decision to make. As for me, I went back to school part-time. Finished the degree I abandoned when I got married. Took a job at a nonprofit that supports women in high-conflict custody battles. Felt right, like turning pain into purpose. And I wasn't alone. Ms. Harris became a friend, not just a lawyer. She checked in often. Said I reminded her why she got into this field in the first place. Tessa joked that we were the new Justice League. One evening we all sat around the dinner table, Tessa, Ms. Harris, and I, eating spaghetti and laughing over old court stories. Remember the look on the judge's face when Celeste started crying about her Instagram followers? Tessa said. Ms. Harris choked on her wine. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the bench. We laughed so hard that night. I forgot we had once been fighting for our lives in that same courtroom. That's the thing about healing. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just one quiet moment after another, stacked like bricks, until you realize you've built something new. One day, near the anniversary of the final ruling, Tessa handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Just open it," she said, biting her lip. Inside was a drawing. It was simple, pencil on paper. Just the two of us standing under an umbrella in the rain. But we were smiling. And behind us, instead of clouds, there was sunlight breaking through. I had to draw something for art class, she explained. Theme was resilience. So, I drew this. My throat tightened. "It's beautiful." She shrugged. "It's not just a drawing. It's us." I framed it that night and hung it by the front door. Every morning now when we leave the house, her to school, me to work, I glance at that sketch. And I remember how far we've come. Not just from the court battles and betrayal, but from the silence, the doubt, the fear. We didn't just survive. We grew. That's the story I want her to remember. Not the courtroom or the fights or even the victories, but the strength it took to rebuild. The love that held us together. The truth that finally set us free. Because at the end of it all, this isn't a story about losing or winning custody. It's a story about finding our voices together and using them to never be silenced again. A year and a half later, we stood on the same courthouse steps where everything began. This time, no one was yelling. No papers were flying. No hearts breaking in real time. Tessa was taller now, almost as tall as me. She wore a navy blazer over a t-shirt that said, "Truth Matters." She had insisted on coming back. Not because we had more battles to fight, but because she had a message to share. Her school had invited her to speak on Youth Advocacy Day. She stood behind the podium with quiet confidence. No trembling hands. No rushed words. Just steady truth. "I used to think courtrooms were places where you lost things," she said. "But sometimes they're where you find your power." I didn't get justice because I shouted louder. I got it because I finally felt heard. The small crowd applauded. I clapped too, holding back tears. When she stepped down, she walked straight to me and took my hand. "We made it," she whispered. And we had. The damage they tried to cause didn't define us. The lies didn't last. The truth did. And from that truth we built a life neither of us had dared to imagine back then. A life rooted in trust, in peace, and in each other. Tessa is not a victim. She's not even just a survivor. She's a girl who spoke up and changed her world. And I'm just the mother who stood beside her every step of the way.